welcome you to the School District of Waukesha. This is the Finance and Facilities Committee meeting for December 12th, 2022. Have we been properly posted?
Yes, we have.
Okay, thank you. And we'll move right into our opportunity for our public to address this committee. We have one speaker tonight, and in that case, we'll have up to 5 minutes for your comments. We expect all speakers to honor our time limit, refrain from using any inappropriate language, and being respectful in their comments. Speakers who do not meet these expectations may be prohibited from speaking at future board and committee meetings. Speakers are here to address the board, not the audience. The school board and this committee does not endorse any comments made by the members of the community here tonight. We would like to remind our community members of the impact of their words on others and that our children are watching. We commit to communicating with you in respectful and productive ways and ask that you do the same. We also expect that the audience will be respectful of the speaker and of the board and refrain from responding with verbal comments, cheering applause, or other behavior that will detract from the meeting. Please note that no obstructions can be created between the board and the audience. Visual aids cannot be used, and the area behind the speaker and podium will be clear during public comment. Also, in order to respect our speakers and the meeting participants, please silence your cell phones at this time. Paul Reese is our speaker this evening. Welcome, Paul.
Good evening. He may look real cute now, but you should have seen him Sunday on the way home from church. I would say, too hungry? Anyways, I want to talk about Kettle Moraine, not Kettle Moraine, North High School and its swimming pool, and it's a 25-meter pool, and there are problems there with performance, and just the pool itself being 25 meters, that it doesn't allow kids to get state qualifying times for their pool. It doesn't have state records. There's a lot of drawbacks to having a 25-meter pool instead of a 25-yard pool. So how could we fix that? Well, South has a catwalk on it. So 25 meters and 25 yards is about 7-foot difference. I don't know why a catwalk type thing can't be put on the end of that pool to bring it up to regulation size for those kids. This affects a number of strokes. Of course, the backstroke it does. It throws your backstroke way off, as well as your IM. It throws that one off as well. So it's a setback to these kids. Again, only one kid from North qualified for state this year. And because it's a different pool, it's a different swim. It also, when you're swimming competitively, there's also scholarships at stake here. And if you're at a disadvantage in a pool that you're probably not going to get your times right and get your qualifying right, then if I was a parent who went to Kettle Moraine, I would open and enroll my kid into Arrowhead if I had a talented swimmer. There is no way I would send him to North. It's just, I wouldn't do it. And my preference would be to close down North and split it up between West and South, but Arrowhead will stop that from ever happening. But, so to fix that pool would require that. You'd have to probably put in new flagpole hosts. There's a couple of things that would have to be done for it, but to get this up to regulation, rather than, they always say you have to dig out the pool and do everything. I don't understand why it just couldn't be fixed the way South is, because that catwalk is actually regulation for state. It makes the qualifications. We run state out of South. So it seems like it would be an easier fix than digging up the end of a pool. So, again, there's drawback. All those records would be gone from that pool. They would all disappear because they're all metered, they're all long records. It would give the kids a lot of opportunities, more opportunities, and for just how they swim and how to do, again, your IMs and everything else. So this is probably going to be the last time I ever speak on this, because I don't have really a dog in this fight. I love swimming. It's a passion of mine. My daughter's in it. My son's learning. And it's a good time. And I know these kids enjoy it. But North is just really struggling as far as all of its qualifying. And I think it's because of that. And I know, because I know if I had my daughter, I would, again, I'm reiterating something, but I would not send her to North. I would open and enroll her into Arrowhead. Anyways, thanks for your time.
Thank you, Paul. Okay, moving on to our action items. We do have 3 action items tonight. And we'll start with the approval of our minutes for the November 7th F&F committee meeting. You looking for a motion?
Moved.
Moved by Mr. McCaffrey. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Dr. Piasek. Any discussion or corrections? Okay, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Passes 5-0, Darren. Thank you. Moving on to our vouchers for this month. Were there any questions that were called in? Sherry?
Nope, no questions this.
Okay. Going easy on you, I guess, huh? Do we have any questions that we want to ask of Sherry this evening? Okay, otherwise, I would be looking for a motion to approve the vouchers.
So moved.
Moved by Mr. McCaffrey. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Carrie Kozlowski. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Passes 5-0. And moving on to our third action item, we have a lease before us for the Richardson School to lease out Pleasant Hill. They have done so for the last 8 years, and we're considering more years. Darren, do you want to kick this off for us?
Yeah, I'm just trying to get to.
And we did see this last month, and we had asked you to fine-tune things a little bit.
Yeah, we had 2 topics that came up, I guess 3. One was the sections of the contract that had intentionally omitted, and Jess went back and looked at those paragraphs. And it looks like it goes back to actually Heritage leased Pleasant Hill from 11 to 14. And then we kept that contract in place and just omitted the sections that really didn't apply anymore. They, I think, right of first refusal was one of them. So that's been in there since Richardson started leasing the school. The other thing was the term of the contract in terms of when we could, sorry, I have an error message on my.
Yeah, I lost it too.
So I'm trying to ad-lib this thing. So the other thing was the, when we could get out of the lease contract, and so we moved that up a year, so we could actually be in there in 2015-16. If you can actually look at it, I think it's like page 16 or so. So we moved that back a year, and then we tweaked the maintenance amount, because they pay rent and then they pay into a maintenance fund in the first year. We lowered it to, because right now they're under contract for this year, so we're rewriting this year and then adding years on. So we lowered that by $5,000. That was essentially the trade-off we made for our ability to term the last 2 years of the contract.
So I think we're all hitting the same technology error right now. I do have
Try to sign it out. There we go.
an extract of that table under item E, Darren, so I could kind of maybe speak to that. The way that it's structured now is the earliest that we could notice termination would be June 30th of '24, with the last date of lease being June 30th of 2025. So that still, I think, generously gives them the time that they need and just builds in that flexibility that we were looking for last month for business reasons, but not really for any other, if I recall.
Yeah, it tightened it, for us, it tightened it up by a year, and I think that helps. And so I think this is a good compromise, between both organizations. They've been a really great tenant over the years, too. So I'm glad you guys were able to work that out, Darren.
So with your approval, I'll forward a copy to Richardson tomorrow morning for signatures, so.
And there were also a couple other questions that we had. There were some paragraphs that were taken out from
Yeah, I
the
mentioned
previous
that in
time.
my opening comments.
Yeah.
That goes back to the Heritage lease. And I know one of the things I think was a right of first refusal and things like that. So we just left it in there so you could go back and, I'm guessing what they did is they left those omitted numbers in there so
We didn't think
language
something,
still,
yeah,
you know, the amount you pay is still Article 3. and,
yes, yes. I think that works well. That's fine. I think that was good. I think that made it at least more clear from a historical perspective. Other questions or comments on the contract that's before us? If not, I would be looking for a motion. Mr. McCaffrey?
I move approval of the Richardson School lease of Pleasant Hill as presented.
Okay, is there a second? Ms. Reincheck, or Mrs. Robertson? Second it? Any further questions or discussion on the lease? Okay, all in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed? Okay, that passes 5-0.
And just for a point of clarification, this committee has the authority to approve this lease, but it is on the board agenda in case you would have wanted to forward it to the full board. But my understanding is FNF has the authority to approve
Yes.
this, and so we'll just skip that on Wednesday.
All right, moving on to our discussion and information items. We do have 6 of those items. The first one on deck is the monthly budget report. Sherry, will you take that?
I certainly will.
Thank you.
And it's probably going to be pretty fast because I have 5% battery left. So
Oh, okay.
I didn't print it off. And it really isn't that long this month. Things are going well. We're, as usual, where we expect to be on the budget. Couple things, interest rates just continue to surpass, and they've gone above what we had increased our budget to already. So we'll have to look at changing and increasing that budget. But school fees and the textbook fees are running behind this year. So not sure why the payments are a little slower this year than they have been in the past couple of years. But what we're making up in interest would far take care of any shortages that we had in textbook fees this year. Interdistrict, just payments for EHE for the first semester tuition. We received our first of 3 payments for our AGR grant. That's formerly the SAGE grant. That's the Achievement Gap Reduction. And our first payment was $241,477, which is normally our annual amount. That grant was shut off a couple of years ago, and if you weren't in the program, you couldn't get into it. And we had it at Whittier. Well, DPI allowed us to carry that grant to Hadfield, and it's a grant based on enrollment. And because the enrollment of your free and reduced students. And because Hadfield has an exceptionally high number of free and reduced students, plus now the enrollment is higher than what Whittier was, our allocation increased quite a bit. So that's a positive thing. I just wanted to point that out in case you noticed it was a lot more than what it's been in the past. Received title payments. Other than that, not a lot of activity going on from a revenue perspective. Salaries and benefits, right on target, where we expect them to be. Purchase services, our top 3 areas are our norms: personal services, utilities, and tuition. The majority of the personal services was for paving at Horning, Banting, and Rose Glen, so that was the big chunk of it. Let's see, non-capital objects, textbooks were big, but that was an approved ESSER 2 purchase, so it's one we were expecting for sure. Let's see, transfers, there was a $500,000 transfer from 10 to 46. That's our long-term capital project, and that was approved in the budget this year for the transfer, so that transfer was made. There was in other objects, a refund on prior year expenses of $35,000. It was a payment from the city of Waukesha for rescinded taxes, so it was a rebate that we got back. However, on the same day, we got a bill across all the municipalities for almost the same exact amount of what we owe them for non-paid taxes. So it's kind of going to be a wash in the long run. So overall, Fund 10 is looking good, on target, no surprises. And Fund 27 is pretty much the same thing. Revenue, we're starting to see it trickle in now. We had received our first categorical aid payment for special education. Otherwise, salaries and benefits really are our main expenditure to this date, and they're on target, so. Our health claims continue to be very positive for us, and we added, my report's not coming up, but I had it added on the bottom of the document. I believe it was about $240,000 this past month to that surplus that we have. So that's good. Dental went down a little bit, but we have enough surplus to absorb that. We're expecting those claims to kick in at some point. Taxes, I didn't put the tax document in because nothing changes now until January when we get our first tax payments. So what you received last month is what it'll be till the February meeting when we record the January.
Okay, thank you. Do we
I have
have
anything.
questions? All right, still early in the year, too. So
It is.
it's, it doesn't seem early, but from a financial perspective, we get a lot more action. It's starting to pick up in December, but a lot more starting in January. And obviously, we have a big push towards the end of the year, too, on a lot of things.
Yes.
Yeah, so thank you for that. Appreciate it. ESSER update. Darren, you going to take that one?
Yeah, and I was just able to get in, so I don't know okay. So if you want to try again if you're not in. I just put this on here with the approval of the HVAC work at last month's meeting. And we have assigned all of the ESSER funds. So I put this on here, besides saying we would do it every month, is T&L would be bringing forward, if you look under ESSER 3, the top, 7 items there are all things the board has seen before, but you wanted us to bring back the second year of all that activity for final approval. So I believe Jody's bringing that back right after the first of the year in January or February. So be looking for that.
Okay. Any questions or comments on the ESSER fund allocations and to-date purchases?
Just one other thing, if ESSER becomes a big part of the state budget discussion, we'll have to communicate very clearly that though we haven't expended everything, we've assigned everything. In case you would get that question or something, or if a citizen would ask you, that we are done, it's just a matter of running through the projects and the costs at this point.
Can I add something that on the voucher reports that I sent out, I added a new pivot table that breaks it out by projects. And so if you want to look at each month, you can see ESSER 2 and ESSER 3, how much has actually been spent that month.
It's very helpful.
In the project.
That's nice, yeah. Any other questions or comments on ESSER? Yes, Ms. Kozlowski.
Yeah, Darren, I just want to clarify for ESSER 3, the items that you just did note that are assigned, those do not mean that we would be spending on those, correct? Or were those part of like a 3-year approval?
The ones that are labeled assigned, T&L brought forward a large package and they broke it into 2 phases.
Yep.
And the board was only comfortable approving the first phase, so you didn't deny those requests, you just wanted final approval rights, which will be forthcoming, and then we will
Okay,
expense.
so they still need to get approved?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments on ESSER? All right, thank you, Darren, for that. Appreciate it. And we'll move right into our budget forecast for 2023, 2024.
Yeah, just a quick statement on the budget, since we just had we discussed it last month, and we had a discussion a week or last week as well, so I don't feel this need to go through all of that information. Again, though, if you have questions, I can certainly address them. But just to allow everyone to know that we are projecting a budget shortfall heading into the 23-24 school year. And it is larger. We've always talked historically of a $3 to $4 million shortfall, but with inflation, is causing that deficit to be a little larger. So administratively, tomorrow morning, we meet in cabinet and we'll start working on a plan to develop a balanced budget to bring forward to this committee and the board in summer for the first go-around, and then October for final approval. And then keep in mind also, in early '23, I think it's February, has to have it done. The governor will be proposing a new state biennial budget plan to the legislature. That's really when this thing gets started. I know DPI's rolled out their budget, but that's a piece of paper as far as I'm concerned. But we don't do much planning off of that, especially with split leadership in Madison. So that's out there as well, and we'll talk more about the key parts or topic areas to look at in that state biennial budget, because it's a huge document, but obviously there's some of them are much more important than others.
Dr. Piasek.
Thank you. Darren, I just have a question about the recent communication around the common library funds potentially going up. Actually, I don't think it was potentially. I think it was confirmed with a press conference. Are those calendar annual funds, or are those school year budget funds?
School year.
Okay. And my understanding was about a 30% increase across the board. So when do we receive communication about what that allocation is and what we can use it for? Well, I mean, we already know what we can use them for unless.
Yeah, I would say spring.
In March.
Not until
we get it.
spring.
And we don't actually get the funds until
April.
April.
We get them in April.
Okay.
So every year we have this issue with common school funds. We never know what our allocation is going to be at budget time. So we pick a conservative amount because the last thing we want to do is overspend it and have to take it out of the fund balance. And then I work with the librarians when the final allocation comes out to allocate the remaining funds. And this year, obviously, Jody will be more involved in that process with the new things we've implemented with T&L.
This might be a good opportunity to look at, are we applying the full extent of the rules under which we can acquire things like reading software and assets for libraries and those types of things?
Yeah, we're really good about watching those rules because, and as part of my annual report with DPI every year, I have to report what we spent it on. And it's very specific in the annual report. So if we were to spend it on things that didn't apply, it would catch there.
Yeah, I'm not suggesting that we spend it on things that don't apply. I'm just wondering if there are things that we're spending on that would apply, that we could leverage those
got it.
incremental dollars for.
Certainly, makes sense.
Yeah, we can, and we always take a look at that, and there's pretty strict rules on that. But we can finalize that amount that we'll be getting and provide an update to the board on the rules and regs tied to it, because basically it comes down to it has to be housed in the library. It's kind of the general rule, which makes sense, but there's nuances to that, so we can bring back in.
Yeah, unfortunately, and I was more curious about the timing of it, but it sounds like it's not something that we'll have any clear guidance on until we get much further down
Until after the first of the year,
process.
for sure.
We can, and we have to, any unspent common school funds have to be carried over in a special fund balance for the library. So if that was something where we wanted to look at potentially covering more costs next year, if there's things that apply, we could certainly leave it in fund balance and not have to spend it all by the end of the year. The district has traditionally tried to spend it all every year until COVID hit, and then we've had carry over the last couple of years. But if there's a strategic plan that we can look at to utilize that extra amount into next year with the budget issues, we certainly can. Thank you.
Any other questions on the 2023-2024 budget as we develop it. Again, we're really early in the process, but we do get going now and try and flesh out some of these things, these questions that we might have as a committee as we roll through this. So we always have a few for you, Darren. That
That's good.
keeps you busy, right, on your toes. Moving on, we have an update on West, actually not an update, but our West High School entrance. Many moons ago, we fought hard to get a light there, and that intersection, we're blessed to have that light there, but I think we need to make some changes, and you have some suggestions that the county is presenting to us, correct, Darren?
Yeah, the county contacted us, I think it was the day after our November FNF meeting, and we met with them out at West, with West leadership. They're planning on renovating that intersection this summer. So we got together and talked about traffic patterns, and obviously, high schools are just as busy in summer as they are during the school year. But they are looking to widen it. I would project it, but I can't get to the agenda item. To widen it and make the stoplights permanent. Right now, those were temporary stoplights when they were put up 15 years ago now, I don't even know, a long time ago. So it was a really good conversation. They will be coming back and asking for some small easements because they are adding, at least when I can think of off the top of my head, as you're exiting west, the right-hand turn will have a separate lane, so it'll be widened slightly, which won't impact our fields at all, our athletic fields, so.
I think there's also a right-hand turn as you're, I guess it's kind of going north, turning into west, coming from the southern direction.
Yeah, we talked a lot about that.
That was extended too.
Yeah.
Made that wider.
Yep.
And
I
then the
think
other
that-
side for the church, I think they did the same thing too. Put in a right-hand turn lane, so that should really help quite a bit there.
Yeah, we even talked to them about when the lights should be, have a longer right-hand turn arrow at the peak time of going into starting school and at the end, and sporting events like on a Friday night have those arrows be longer to allow people to move in and out. So it was a really good meeting. They don't have a final plan yet. I would guess in like February or so, we'll have something for you to look at that's a little more near final or nearly official, along with some easements that will need approval.
Yeah, what I did see of the plans, it looked really good, actually. I think it'll be a big improvement for us.
Only if you want to see it. I can't open mine right now, but.
Sure.
You want to do the satellite view? Yeah.
Yeah, that was really a good view. The technical document was a little more difficult to understand, at least maybe for me.
Apparently only two of us can be on at once or something.
Lost their licenses.
Yeah, it's board docs, it's not the Wi-Fi. Should let Steve know.
So the entrance into West is the bottom of the screen. And right now there is a median there. The blackened triangle area, that'll be a second median that'll go in. And then you can kind of see a black line heading into that. And then once you get onto Salesville Road, you can see the black line reemerge into the lane. That's where the turn lane will be added. They are adding a crosswalk from the north on the left-hand side of the intersection into West's parking lot, but it's not gonna, you ever remember the poetry book where the sidewalk ends? We're living it. But everything else, as Joe mentioned, it'll be a wider, better lit, really an intersection, according to the people who design these things, that matches with the volume of traffic that you have within a high school and a church and all the other things, so.
That helps a lot. It helps to see that. Remind us of what's there, what will be coming. And this is newly added to, turning into the church and.
So it'd be nice, but it sounds like it'll be a fairly lengthy project. I mean, they won't be in and out of there in a week. So Kyle Lemieux sat in with Ryan, Pat, the principal, and they got a good jump start on the key days that are out there and what events and some ideas of having students come around to the backside of West to enter if they can. And then it'll be intermittent, some access will be available throughout the summer, but it'll be shifting with where the work is. One lane might be closed and the other one open, or vice versa, as they work through, so. And I think I put the meeting agenda on there just so you can see some of the topics that we talked about as well.
Any other questions or comments on this project? Yeah, those improvements should help from a safety perspective, so that's good. That's good. Moving on to our last discussion information item. I forgot who brought up a question on our district property. They were talking about the one over by the McCarthy Avenue.
Yeah, Mr. Montillo had asked about the Schaefer property.
Yeah.
A couple months ago, and I told him I'd put it on F&F.
So I think it's best that we go through all of our properties and some of the recent transactions. You had a pretty thorough report, Darren, on that?
Yeah, I have, it's really going to be a short report if I can't get to the slide deck.
And we could do it next month too. Maybe if we can't get to the slide deck, maybe that's best is just to move that. Because there was a lot of information in that.
Oh, here we go.
You got it?
Yep. Never a doubt. So as Joe mentioned, the question was specific to the Merrill Hills Road property or the Schaefer property or the bypass property, whatever you want to call it. It has several names. But I thought it'd be a good chance to go over not only property that we own, but some facilities that we own but maybe aren't utilizing for what they were designed. In one recent transaction of a sale of a property to just to educate everyone on what exactly we have. So I guess I'll just do it this way, that's fine. So here's a map that, and Jess had planned on presenting all this, but we've been passing illness around our office, so it was her turn. The orange marks are all of our schools, and then properties that we're going to talk about are the blue lettered with the white background boxes. So they're evenly spread out. Pleasant Hill, we just approved a lease, but and Richardson's been there for 7, and Heritage, as I mentioned, was there a few years prior to that. And that last served as a school for us, a K-5 or maybe K-6 at the time, back in fiscal year 2010. Capacity is about 288 to 300 students, and it can easily be returned to a school. We've talked about the location. It is kind of a unique property in that regard. It also has the option to do additions. There's a lot of green space with that property as well. So
Many acres.
yeah.
Many acres, yeah.
And it's on a major road as well, which with a controlled intersection as you leave the building. So it lays out well if the need ever arises. Harvey Phillips. This one's idle and has been idle for several years. It used to be where East was. And now it's sat vacant for at least my 7 years here and probably 7 years prior to that at least. There used to be the environmental ed building next to that. We tore that down in 16. So this is probably something we should revisit at some point on what the plans might be. To go back into that building would be a major investment.
I spent 3 years of my life there, 4th, 5th, and 6th grade. I was part of Saratoga back then, so.
Yeah, it is connected to Saratoga by a tunnel, or a hallway, I guess, it's not below ground. So it's there, and we really don't use it. There's some storage that goes on in there, but it's not a building that's heavily used at all. Again, at some point, maybe we should have a conversation about the future of that as we look at all of our facilities in total. This one, anyone who's been on the board is very familiar with the Oakdale property. We purchased it in 1997 for $856,000. The original purchase was just over 42 acres of land. We sold 7 to the city in 2014, so it's around 36 acres now. We were leasing it to farmers. The last lease ended when COVID ended. We didn't go back to the lease yet because we thought things were moving and we didn't want to have another wrinkle to the conversation, but apparently there's enough other wrinkles that one's not needed either. So we're fielding offers on the purchase or sale, depending on what side of the transaction you're on, for this property. And this is at the corner of the bypass and Oakdale Drive on the south side of town. The Arlington property, this is right across from Les Paul. We just purchased this in 2020. The thought was that at some point it could provide additional parking for Les Paul. We had discussions with the properties as you move towards the corner. The COVID hit and everything, we never got back to it. What was unique at the time about this property and why it was I think decided to purchase it was the house that was on that property had already burned down, the main house. So you were only buying the land. You weren't buying a building that you had no use for. There was a very small in-law suite or whatever you want to call it. Couldn't have been more than a few hundred square feet that we tore down a couple of years ago. So again, holding it to see if some parking options become available at some point. Here's probably the biggest kept secret in Waukesha School District.
I didn't even know about this one.
North University Drive. And I'm assuming when the subdivision went in, they never cleaned up the boundaries. So we own, and only reason I know this is Glenn Norder, when I came back in 15, took me for a drive and he pointed this little section of land out. They did try to do an RFP in '93 and no one jumped at the opportunity to pay us money for a piece of property that we really have no use for. I had told Glenn that someday we'd erect a statue in his honor on this property, but so I don't think it's going to solve our balance or our budget issues, but there's nothing. I mean, it's truly.
So
Can you build that?
I don't think you could do anything on it.
it's too tiny.
It's too small. You can put a garage.
Bus stop.
The map actually makes it look like there's some, yeah, and it's not.
I don't know.
And the easement, so you would
Good
have a
question
little.
to ask.
And we have that wide?
I'm assuming when they came in and put in university or something, they didn't follow the boundaries. They just, kind of like the bypass. So,
So they left us with an unbuildable plot of land.
yes,
Do we have to mow it?
no. I wonder if the person who lives in that
It's probably been squatting on that for.
has taken care, we've never done anything with it.
So,
So, we actually have the same, well, we'll be looking at the Schaefer property in a minute.
What's this road?
That cuts right in front
Michigan?
of north. Is that Michigan?
Yeah, I think that's Michigan.
Yeah.
Okay, now I know where it is. Okay.
So,
We don't
There.
pay property taxes.
no, there's no holding costs. But
Wow.
it's a little known fact that now's everyone who's watching, all three of them are going to know about.
an advertisement for
I'm pretty sure, I don't even know
We
if
probably have to get permission.
legally.
That guy's been cutting that grass for 15 years, it's his.
Oh, at least.
Claim against the district to take it over. Because they're maintaining, I think 15 years is the state statute.
I mean, what do you call those, what do you call those quick deeds? What do you call?
Different than a quick deed, but.
Now, there's something about when you care for it for a
if you
period
care
of time, I
for it,
forget
think
the
it's
legal
15
term.
years. You care for a piece of property for 15 years, like if I cut my neighbor's, the fence is wrong, I'm cutting his grass, and
Sure,
I can petition the court that it becomes part of my property.
sure. Well, I guess,
There's no litigation for that.
is there any reason for us to keep it? Why don't we even just, I mean, I don't know why we need it.
We could get it back on the tax rolls.
That little piece.
Is it big enough for a food truck?
I guess, yeah.
I don't
guess.
think it even is. I mean,
Oh, he doesn't, probably
that-
put a pad on there.
that map we should use for the listing because it makes it look a lot larger than it actually is, but I thought you would enjoy. We actually have a few of these things where the roads and the boundaries over time just don't match.
I think this room is bigger.
Oh, yeah. I would guess.
Can we at least ask the people whose property that butts up to if they want to buy it? Because that would increase their acreage and therefore their property value, and it's not doing us any good.
We could. I don't know what they'll give us for it because they're using it for free now, so.
Yeah, then, yeah.
Well, if they wanted to plant a tree on it or do anything like that, they would have to have our permission.
There could be a tree there.
True.
But no, we can reach out to them. It's the kind of thing we should clean up, in my mind, but our luck, there'd be a little car accident on that curve, so. So that's the University Drive property. This is one we just sold, the Larson property at 164. We purchased it in '92 for $240,000. It's 36 acres, and then we sold it in July of '18 for $575,000. There's still no development on that property. There may never be development on that property, so I think it was a wise move to move on from there. And even if we wanted to build a school there, I don't know if we'd even get that approved down there, but who knows? They're building schools down there now, but, so this is a closed one. And then we get into Merrill Hills Road, or the Schaefer property. We bought it from the Schaefers back in '98 for $1.4 million, just shy of 129 acres. So this goes in phases because we had a couple transactions occur since we've owned it due to the bypass. So that was the original purchase. And you can see the bypass in there, but obviously I wasn't there at the time. And then the bypass finally came along, and remember the lengthy conversation we had with the state on the sale of, or eminent domain, ended up being a sale. Well, eminent domain never followed through, but they bought 8.71 acres for $942,000. But what it did is it cut the lot. I think there's about 16 acres east of the bypass that we own, and then the remaining parcel is west of the bypass. One of the things that was a hot topic that we had to work through with them and was there was no stable access point they were going to provide us. So you can see MacArthur come across, it kind of curves down right there. That was the only intersection that would be a controlled intersection if we ever wanted to develop this property. Otherwise, they were just going to give us the little gravel path and essentially make it, and they told us they would never add lights for us. Yep, they would never add lights for us because the purpose of the bypass is not to have lights every half a mile. So we entered into conversations with Hazy, the landscaping company. He got his property cut because his business and home is on the east side, and he was getting out of having his own inventory. Yeah, he lived right there, and there's another house next to it. So we entered into conversations with Hazy to get us that intersection of MacArthur and the bypass. The original purchase is part of the city water deal. The Hazy property is actually in the village of Waukesha, just for a point of fun fact, I guess. So we bought that, and then we ended up with this, and that's our land holding out there now. We do lease this out to a farmer. I think we get like $18,000 a year of rental or fees, and we ended up with about 140 acres. There's quite a bit of wetlands out there, so the actual buildable's probably 25, 30. But we have some weird little parcels of land where MacArthur was extended. So there's a little triangle that Hazy owns on the north side of it, and it's just, I don't know if it's worth cleaning all that up, but, so this is our land holding, and again, I see this, and I think it's been the view of people, this is our long-term hold, as a district for any development that we may need at some point in time in the future. I think it was a smart buyback in the day. The value is certainly there. I'm sure it's gone up, a decent amount. So that's all of our property or land holdings that are kind of not actual school sites right now or administrative buildings.
Any questions or on any of the properties? We spent a lot of time on the littlest one. Yeah, it was a surprise. Heck, I never even heard of that, and I'm like,
Glenn went to told.
I'm almost a fossil here.
No way.
There's a map of all the little stuff that we looked at one time. There's all these little dots of stuff that we're responsible for. All over the place.
Mm-hmm.
Dr. Piasek.
Darren, how are those lease agreements handled or structured? Is it something that administration just takes responsibility for, or how long are they set for?
The building leases always come through here. The farmer lease, we've normally just done it through the business office.
We had reviewed it once, I think, since I've been on the board.
And I think it's a couple of year lease. It's not very long. We bid it out then when COVID came, we didn't do anything. But normally it was every couple of years we bid it out. And we'd get, 4 or 5 responses. I don't know if the market's still 4 or 5 people now or not, but that we also stopped because of the construction of the bypass, because we couldn't guarantee access, and it just wasn't going to be worth the 18 grand to have the farmer maybe not have access to the fields at certain times, and
That change our tax basis at all when we lease it out?
mm-mm.
Okay.
Nope.
Any other questions on our properties that we hold? A little bit of history there, too. All right, thank you, Darren. I appreciate it. Yeah, it was pretty comprehensive. When you find something that, heck, I didn't even know about, that's pretty comprehensive. Not that I know everything, but I've just been around a long time, so that was a curveball. And I know there was a time where we had we had some agreements with some properties next to like playgrounds that the city owned, and, we share like out in the Banting, area, where we were maintaining some, they were maintaining some, and we did some quick deeds. I think they're called quick deeds. It's not quite the term, but it is basically an agreement on either we took some properties over, and they took some properties over, and we had to clear up some of those things. That might have been prior
I
to
know
your
in the
time, Darren. Do you remember that, Pat?
the late 90s, I remember us going through, because we discovered that our properties weren't in our name, because we used to be a city school district, so we went through with the city and
That's what I think
created,
I'm thinking of. Yeah, that's what I'm thinking of, Darren.
Quite a few
Yeah, Hartle Field, we thought we owned it, then the city thought they owned it, and ended up Carroll owned it, or some,
Well, yeah, it ended up.
some, some strange,
City owned it, but we couldn't sell it
yeah.
because of the agreement with the Hurdles.
But we have a lot of, several shared playgrounds and school property throughout the city, that we have arrangements with the city. Now, I don't know if they're all in writing, or if it's just, we agreed on taking care of some things, to make it as efficient as possible, but that's worked out really well.
All right, thank you. Appreciate that, Darren. Any future recommendations for items to be agendized for this committee? All right, seeing none, we do have a need. Do we have a need to adjourn to executive session? We have a need to adjourn to executive session. Would someone please motion us properly? Dr. Piasek.
I will, thank you. I move to adjourn to executive session pursuant to Wisconsin Statute 19.85, parentheses 1, parentheses E, for deliberating or negotiating the purchasing of public properties, the investing of public funds, or conducting other specified public business whenever competitive or bargaining reasons require a closed session. Transportation contract. And?
And Oakdale.
And
Okay.
Oakdale Property Tax Keys, WAKC 1360198, WAKC 13770020002, and WAKC 1377003.
Is there a second to that?
Second.
Second by Mr. McCaffrey. Roll call vote on that, please, Darren.
Mr. Como?
Aye?
Ms. Kozlowski?
Aye.
Mr. McCaffrey?
Aye.
Ms. Robertson?
Aye.
And Ms. Kelly Piasich?
Aye.
Thank you.
All right, well, thank you, everybody,
Promise
for
myself
being,
I
and
won't
we will not return into open session, correct? It's
No.
just,
Just
okay.
information.
Well, thank you for being with us tonight. That is the end of the open portion of our meeting. Thank you.